In entrepreneurship, if you ask 10 people, doesn't really have like a concrete definition. If you want to associate entrepreneurship with being a business owner, it's not really the same thing, right? I mean, entrepreneurship is a mindset.
Welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. My name is Chris Kiefer, and I am here today with Reid Tileston, who is an entrepreneur, business owner, an adjunct professor, an investor, a board member, successfully exited operator, researcher, and an author of a new book called Grit It Done. So, Reid, first of all, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to come on and share some wisdom with all the listeners.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for the invite. I am honored to be here. As we talked about, I know you're in Coeur d'Alene. I love Idaho. I spent all my summers up there, so it's a great state. And it's never a bad time to talk about purpose. Like, purpose is just such a critical part of maximizing existence. And I just love the title of your podcast, the people you bring on to just share inspirational, positive messages. There's a unique study I love to talk about done in 2017 that identifies two human states, right? One is a state of assessment, one is a state of locomotion. And the study shows that people get more satisfaction when they're actually in a state of locomotion, working towards the ultimate goal that they have. But you know what impacts that state of locomotion? And I'll give you a hint. It's in the title of your podcast.
Purpose,
right? If you can combine locomotion, so taking steps towards an end goal that aligns to a high sense of self-assessed purpose, then you're in the driver's seat for a fulfilled life. So it's common wisdom, but it's always.
What's that study that you said?
It was just a study done in 2017 by some academics.
I know, but what was what was the framework for the study or the purpose of the study?
Oh, it was to understand if people feel more fulfillment in a state of assessment
Fulfillment
versus locomotion, right?
Got it.
So are you happier thinking about what you're going to do or actually taking steps towards doing it?
Which, yeah, and clearly it would be taking steps, right?
It's always nice when academic studies back up what we already know, just by being human
Yeah, by a long shot.
beings. Yeah.
So yeah, what I'm very interested in, and one thing that caught my attention about just you and the book is I am very pro entrepreneurship. My wife and I joke that our most common advice that we give people is to quit their job. It's like the number of times that you're talking to someone and you hear them, complaining or talking about the frustrations. It's like, why don't you just get a different job, which maybe is a luxury, but I also think that at least what I'm intrigued to know from you is that there are some frameworks and some ways for more people to be successful entrepreneurs. So I don't know if that's to what extent, obviously that's in the subtitle of your book, but that's what I'm like. I have a passion around that. And just like, yes, like you said, I love purpose and just like the mission and like, why are we here? What are we doing? But I love even more when other people are inspired to go do the thing, whatever that is in their life, and actually move towards something that's meaningful instead of just taking what I would say is like the safe route or the safe option, which happens to be the job that they have in front of them. Who knows how they got there? But I just feel like it's a much more exciting adventure to, carve out your own path. Yeah, tell us. I mean, you can riff off what I just said, or dive into an overview of this theme or idea of Grit It Done.
So first and foremost, great piece of advice because, again, talking about levels of happiness, if you just switch careers from being an employee to a business owner, you're going to be happier. And also, if you actually switch back from being a business owner to an employee, you're also going to be happier. So change of careers, actually independent of which route you go, which direction you go, drives happiness. So you're given a good piece of advice independent of which way you're going. What I would tell you though,
Interesting. That's another fact of just like when you change jobs, you're going to be happier.
yeah,
For a while, at least.
yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of time to like say, hey, 10 years down the road, was it a good choice, or even 1 year or five? Not to say 1 year, but even a couple years. But in the short term, yes, the change drives happiness. What's more interesting though, in these same, and I don't want to get too much of my academic hat on because I'm just a humble business owner at my core. But what's interesting though is that the change from employment, right? So a job to self-employment, the level of happiness with that change is higher than it is when you change from being a business owner back to being an employee. So both directions drive your happier changing, but the happiness level is higher going from employee to owner, essentially. I think about it in the book as
Mm. I feel like it's got to be something to do with autonomy.
big time autonomy, freedom, controlling the calendar, all that good stuff. And that's actually the exact underlying variable in this study that I'm referencing. The ability to feel like you are controlling your destiny, just to put it in simple terms. So I think about it with there's four personas, right? Which I certainly outline in the book. Persona one is you're an employee, and that's the backbone of it's the backbone of the economy, right? Second persona is you're an equity employee. And we can think about that as being like a CEO, where you're able to do things that add equity value to the organization that you're a part of. Ultimately, you don't control your destiny, though, right? You're at the peril of a board, a peril of a boss in some capacity. So you don't truly own all the upside of what you have, nor do you necessarily control your destiny. Third persona is a business owner. You own your upside. I would say that you have autonomy, you have freedom, and you work for yourself. But oftentimes, you work more for the business. The business owns you more than you own the business. And I love business owners. I've been one for a very long time. The better option is what I'll call entrepreneurial business ownership, which is where the business really works for you. You're able to work on the business as opposed to in the business. And that's where that true freedom, that's where the true autonomy, that's where the true owning your upside comes from. And that's the reason that I wrote a book, which is a 9-step process for how to be an entrepreneurial business owner, which is a mix of frameworks along with my personal experience doing it over the last 16 years. So I agree with you that the better life is as a business owner and the best life is as an entrepreneurial business owner. But let's be crystal clear, it's not an easy life. It's a lot of work, and it's certainly not for everybody. But I wrote a book, Grit It Done. You can get it at grititdone.com, 99 cents through the end of May. That is a great, time efficient, low cost, takes you 3 hours to read. First step in people that are thinking about making that transition from being a employee to being a business owner. And what I outline is that to lower risk and still get the upside, good option is to buy an existing business or an existing concept versus starting one from scratch, because the same upside can be there with lower risk.
So you're saying that one of the best things to do is find a business to buy.
Silver tsunami is going on right now. You have a lot of retiring baby boomers that are transferring. Some people might tell you 20 trillion, some might say 10. They're transferring trillions of dollars of wealth to younger generations. A good portion of that wealth is held up in small business. So there's a lot of opportunities to buy existing businesses going on right now. And there's a ton of demand for them as well, but there's also a lot of supply. So it's a very vibrant time to get involved in that. Contrary to what we oftentimes hear, the American dream is not dead. It is alive and well. And there's a good opportunity to live your own American dream by going out and acquiring one of these businesses. And it can lower the risk as opposed to starting one while still having upside. So yeah, that's
And so this is interesting because this is what you were an adjunct professor. It looks like in your bio here at Case Western Reserve, and it was teaching entrepreneurship through acquisition. And is that this? I'm assuming right in line with what you're talking about, right?
yeah. Well, luckily, I started teaching it after I'd already successfully done it. Who wants to learn from someone that's out of a textbook, right? Not that that's a bad thing, but I like to combine the fact that I've done this like very successfully. Well, I shouldn't say very, very is the term. I've done this successfully.
What is very, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's assessment relative to what you want, right? But I've done this over the course of 16 years with 4 different companies. And after my last exit, which was just a good one, it was 10x plus. I decided then that I wanted to go into teaching, which goes into another key pillar point that I outline in the book, and that is the power of peer groups and the people that you surround yourself with. I was inspired to go and get involved in teaching because when I went to business school at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, right when they were launching their, it's a good career track for MBAs to buy Main Street businesses, I was a teaching assistant for a first-time class that Booth was teaching on this subject. And that experience working with these 2 first-time adjuncts inspired me. It was transformational for me. These two individuals inspired me to want to go. And I'd already done some successful stuff before that in the fitness space and franchising, but they inspired me to want to go out and buy a bigger business. And then it really inspired me to want to come back and teach it. So it's key because I surrounded myself with people that I found empowering that were aligned to my goal of wanting to go out and be a business, to buy another business. And that relationship has just paid so many dividends for me, both then and in the years to come. So what I always advise people to do, and I have some great stories that I talk about in the book, both mine and others, is if you're looking to become a business owner, you need to surround yourself with people that are also looking and that are business owners. And if you're looking to transition from being someone who's owned by their business to someone who is experiences that true freedom and autonomy, you want to surround yourself with people that are also doing that and making those tough choices required to make that transition, or that already have, because whether you want to or not, you will become like the people that we choose to surround ourselves with. And it's a
You just described my favorite quote since I was in high school. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I know you're an Ironman athlete. This is when I'm explaining this to someone who's never heard this concept, you obviously have. I always say, imagine you have Chris version A and Chris version B, and both of them are going to go run an Ironman race. And Chris version A just, signs up for the race and continues doing what he's doing, right? Chris version B, leaves his city or his town or whatever and goes and finds 5 other people that have done a dozen Ironman races between the 5 of them, and he just lives with them.
Yeah, yeah.
Who do you think is going to have a better chance of finishing that race? It's like, no duh. Like, obviously, you just are going to absorb like what you're eating and what you taught, like your routine, your when you go to bed, when you wake up, your conversations over meals and things like that. It just all matters. But I think I completely agree with the peer group of just like, where do you want to be and how do you find people that are either already there or on the same journey as you?
Yeah. And what's interesting is we talk about triathlon. So the first triathlon I did well in it, and I was like top 1% of the runners, probably top 5% in biking, and bottom second percentile in swimming. Right. Then, as the years went on, I joined a group in the San Francisco Bay Area of avid no wetsuit swimmers. And then let's fast forward to the Ironman. My best event was swimming. And it was solely because I spent those years with, and these are the swimmers that do the English Channel, that swim to Catalina Island, like that group of that caliber of people. I was getting my butt kicked the entire time. I could barely keep up. I didn't even really belong there. But over that course of time, I literally switched where swimming was like literally, I was like, oh, I bottom 2% to, it was my best. And I did well in that Ironman. It was my best event. And that to me, on a personal level, really illustrated that point that I just, by being around excellent swimmers, I actually became, an okay swimmer.
Mm. So I want to go back to this idea of like, for those listening to this podcast that are not a entrepreneur by action, maybe mentally they're like, I'm an entrepreneur, I just don't know what to do, or they're scared. What is like is there a secret or a way or a method to encourage or get people to um, dabble or have some success in entrepreneurship, or in actions or things that are going to make them more suited to have success in entrepreneurship? Like, how do I get more people to take the leap and go into entrepreneurship?
Well, it's interesting because you're talking about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship, if you ask 10 people, doesn't really have like a concrete definition, right? If you want to associate entrepreneurship with being a business owner, it's not really the same thing, right? I mean, entrepreneurship is a mindset, I believe, and I would define it as I do in the book, of an individual who takes action. And I would define entrepreneurial mindset as someone who seeks to maximize return while mitigating risk. But there's no definition on it per se. What I would say though is, if you're thinking about quitting, transitioning from your 9 to 5 job and thinking about engaging in some form of what you perceive as a higher risk endeavor, which is what I believe people associate business ownership and entrepreneurship with. This is the whole reason that I wrote this book. Is it's a concrete first step to take to understand what it is like to be an entrepreneurial business owner. And there's two layers to it. One is, if you want to minimize risk, here's the steps that you can follow. It's like the book that I really wish I had 16 years ago when I first went down this route. But secondly, it also provides not just a framework and steps, but it couples them with real world experience. A lot of mostly my real world experience, the in the trenches experience, right? If we're going to talk about like an Ironman, it's like what it actually feels like, to do the transition from biking to running and how painful that can be, right? And it gets to like the actual in the trenches stories to complement the framework so that people can decide, hey, is this like a lifestyle that I think resonates with me? I think it hopefully should, and I believe it will, and I certainly lead by example with it. But that's the reason I wrote the book, is like a concrete, low cost, low time commitment first step to take to get insights into what this world is like. And then outside of that, once they've taken that step, then there's other things that can happen. And it could be, I want to, get an MBA. It could be, I want to go to a weekend workshop and, spend 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day going deep on this stuff, and then, get a peer group thereafter. But it's just an excellent first step to take.
And so are you saying that you would say or like baby steps would be like read a book like this, talk to some people? You think like getting an MBA or going to a Kickstarter accelerator weekend or some angel funding thing, just like starting to get around and see, that's like the baby steps into, okay, I'm going to do this. Is that right?
Yeah, the first step that I put in the book, which is just critical, is assessment. Like, understand what you want to get out of becoming an entrepreneur or a business owner. And I put, a couple questions in there. You just go to the website, grit it done, put in your email, and get access to it. Because understanding what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, is critical in not wasting what is the most precious, valuable commodity out there, and that is time. I see people go down a route of wanting to acquire a business, for example, spend year and a half, 2 years searching, and then maybe they find something, but they get close to the finish line and they can't pull the trigger. They back away. And I think a lot of that is due to the lack of assessment on the front end. And know that as that study I mentioned to kick things off, fulfillment, happiness comes as you're taking steps towards whatever your end goal is. Ultimately, though, if you can align that with more purpose, you're going to have higher levels of satisfaction. And the assessment step, while painful and less fun than locomotion, is critical because it's an instrument that will allow you to optimize time in the process. And there's tons of books out there. There's tons of people out there. But yeah, my guidance, if you want to go down the route of either acquiring a business or buying into existing, opportunity, I would tell you that a great first step in that process, in my opinion, the best, but hey, just for what it's worth, is read the book. That'll cost you 99 cents through the end of May and approximately 3 hours to read. Because I've done this for long enough that a lot of people, will do calls with me and reach out to me, and I have like a nice long queue for that. But what I find is that people are not always prepared for those calls and for that interaction. So that's why one reason I wrote the book, so that people could just get a good baseline sense of where they're at in this process. Because like you, I think that business owners make the country a better place for a ton of reasons, which we could definitely talk more about.
What is the industries or the types of businesses in the next 10 years that you think are going to do well, given just all of the changes and technology and all that's happening at the moment? And now a quick word from our sponsor, which is Boolean Review. Boolean is a review software that my wife and I own, and we sell this software to home service businesses. So I know there are many different people that listen to this podcast, but if you know someone, an electrician, an HVAC business, a painting company, maybe a coffee stand, someone that is providing service to customers and get found online by customers, we would love to talk to them. This is a review software that is the highest converting review software in the home service space in particular. And if you're wondering what that means, if you have 100 clients in your business, the typical business gets between 1 to 2% of those customers. So for every 100, they would get one person or two people to leave them a review on Google. Other review softwares get between 3 and 5%, and the Boolean review software gets 20% of your customers to leave you Google reviews. And these are fantastic Google reviews with lots of words, keywords that are going to help with SEO, pictures, stories, the names of your employees. So if you want to learn more, check out booleanreview.com. And now back to the episode.
The innovation and the industries and all that stuff that I like is I'm a really big fan of things like the fork. Okay. It's been used for thousands of years. And I don't think the fork is going to get out innovated anytime in the foreseeable future. And I've read some interesting analysis and studies that show that the most likely quote unquote innovations or processes that exist that are going to exist in the future, the biggest driver of what causes that is how long they've existed for the past. So, me personally, I like the simplest, unsexy, basic things in the world. I like them so simple that I can explain them to a golden retriever or a 6-year-old. Right? I like simple, unsexy businesses. Every venture that I've been involved in, aside from a little bit of side investing, but every venture that I've truly thrown myself behind has been one where the road to monetization is unsexy, basic, and simple. A multi-unit Anytime Fitness, top performing multi-unit Anytime Fitness owner operator, and I'll give you the key to that whole concept, which I also go into in the book. Find a town, and this towns don't really exist anymore in this case, but find a town 10, 15 years ago that had no competition except for curves and a mom and pop shop. Open an Anytime Fitness there, and you'll make excellent money and make the community a better place. So just go to undesirable places potentially if you don't like small towns. I personally do, and you can be successful that way. So my general guidance is go for the simple. What I like to get involved in, what I like to invest in, I like to operate in, is these simple, main street, unsexy businesses.
What are some other examples besides Anytime Fitness?
The list goes on and on and on and on. Companies that do industrial cleaning, right? Companies that do dirty pumping. Companies that do work on billboards, right? Companies that do maintenance of communication antennas, right? You name it. Like, it just goes on and on and on. There's 32 million businesses in the U.S., 6 million of which have one employee. And I say W-2 employees. So there's obviously a ton of those other 26 million that do it all via 1099s and contractors. There's so many businesses out there that you just don't realize are actually businesses that clean graffiti off walls. There's literally a business that cleans graffiti off of walls, right? That municipalities hire them to do, and some private as well. Companies like that. And it's so interesting because one of the fun parts of searching for a business to buy is that searchers come to realize, wow, I had no idea what actually makes up the fabric of our economy here. And it takes that idea of entrepreneurship and business ownership being about the next Facebook or the next Google, and puts it into this spectrum of these unsexy businesses out there. And there's a lot more traction around this as more people are starting to do it. But the key is that this is not something that happened 5 years ago. It's not something that is done with. It's happening now. And given those demographic trends, it'll happen over the next couple years. So the opportunity to buy existing businesses is pretty lucrative now.
Mm. That's super. Got my wheels turning because I have a personal background in the home service space, in the painting world in particular. That's what my business helps painting companies automate all their back end processes. Super niche, and we literally work with painters. That's it. Residential painters, $4 to $15 million. That's our target, and it's like so specific. And when you tell people, probably people other than yourself, they're blown away by the level of specificity of that business. But it's like the number, I almost feel like there's a part of me that wants to say the more absurd the business seems, or the more absurdly specific a business is, potentially the better the business is. Not, I know it's not like you could easily disprove that, but I feel like with just some of the ones you rattled off, it's like, oh man, there's very niche businesses that are needed, and I'm never, there's probably thousands of ideas I've never even thought of.
And the key to it is that I have an MBA, and one of my passion projects now is I'm working towards a PhD where I do research on like small business and small business ownership. I'm exceptionally passionate about it, but I'll keep it simple. At a breakfast in La Jolla when I was in high school, my grandmother explained to me Economics 101, and that is that you have supply and you have demand, and they meet at a certain point, and that clears the market. So without demand for the product or service, there is no market. So when I think about businesses to get involved in, I want to have zero questions about if there is a strong, concrete demand. I go into the story in the book and into the frameworks that I have to think about this, but I'll keep it simple in the sense that one business I bought did a lot of grease trap pumping. And, grease, as long as there's restaurants and people in this particular state eat out, there's going to be grease generated. And municipalities require that these grease traps get serviced and get pumped. So somebody's got to do it. Demand is essentially guaranteed, right? I like businesses that fit that criteria.
So what are there like I'm assuming there you can hire a consultant to find a business to buy. Are there there's got to be websites, and like what is the here's a funny question. How fast could someone, and obviously like with coaching. So I'm here, I am not looking for a business. I have my own business, but I'm intrigued by what you're saying. So if I was like, I want to buy a business, what would be like a blistering fast pace that I would own a business that I previously was not looking for and didn't know about? If I was like serious about, all right, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah, so my strong guidance is spend 99 cents and the 3 hours.
Read the book first.
Buy the book that I wrote because, Chris, like you have a business, you understand painting, all that good stuff, right? Like you kind of get it to an extent, but I'd still encourage you to go through and read it because before you invest any time looking on like, bizbuysell.com or all the other resources I could send you to and everything like that, spend the time to do the assessment and figure out, is this something that you actually want to do? Understand that there's steps you can take to maximize rewards and minimize the risk, which I outline in there, but ultimately don't go, get an MBA because you decide like, oh, I want to go get an MBA to do this. And I love MBAs, by the way. Or don't decide that I want to go and invest 20 hours of my time looking for a business, or don't, go take like a 3 hour workshop or a 3 day workshop just yet. Read the book first, go through the assessment, go through that kind of gut wrenching thing of, hey, this is intriguing, but do I actually want to do it? And then decide what the course of action is there. And that way you'll optimize time for it. Because again, intrinsic reason that I decided to write this book is that, this has been a great lifestyle for me. And I'm super passionate about it for a lot of reasons we can keep on going into. Because I've experienced that freedom, that autonomy. I'm seeing other people do it, but it's definitely not for everybody. And I think that it's just a good practice to have like a good concrete first step before going down that route about, do I want to use a broker, do it myself? Do I want to, what website so I go to? How should I engage it? The answers to those questions, high level, are in the book, and the details will be answered as you keep on taking steps down that path. So read the book, consider taking a class for it, find the right peer group. Those are kind of some of the steps, but it's literally all outlined in there. And I take success, quite frankly, if someone reads a book and is like, it seems like a great life, but you know what? It's just like not for me, because they'll probably read it and then go find that business owner neighbor of theirs and say, you're awesome. Like, thank you for doing the work that keeps America great, and things like that. But deciding not to do this is just as good an option as deciding to do it. It's just the key is make that decision earlier rather than later, because the best things in life are the ones that we do not ultimately do, because that leads us to the things that we do ultimately do. And hopefully those align more to what our ultimate purpose is.
What's your opinion on the feasibility of owning multiple businesses um, at the same time versus, it sounds like what you did was buy, exit, a couple times, correct?
No, yes, yes, and no. Yes, I've bought and sold, but yes, I've also owned numerous businesses at numerous times as well. So what I would say is that put the cart before the horse, essentially, or don't, whatever that's saying. You know what I'm trying to say. Take it one step at a time. It's fine to have that vision that you want to do that, some number of years down the road, but realize that in order to get there, you're probably going to have to do a lot of legwork to build that hold co or that absentee ownership up. And what I would tell you is my advice is get into it knowing that that's a good long-term vision to have, but ultimately there's going to be a lot of work from getting to where you are now to getting to that point going forward. And I put in frameworks that I personally use and that I've seen people use very effectively around how to hire the right people, the right entrepreneurial employees, because entrepreneurial employees can provide owners that freedom to own multiple businesses. And it's always great that when you're blessed with the presence of a team member like that, to know the right ways to cultivate them, to know the right ways, the right culture to build that will help keep them around, and to know how to effectively manage them. So I go into those things in the book, but I would tell you that having the right team members is a critical part of it. And sometimes, by the way, they literally will just show up. I was opening a fitness center in a small town once. I was hanging out on my laptop before the club even opened. And out of nowhere, someone grabbed my arm, really awkwardly, actually. And she was like, "Hey, are you the individual that wants to open that club here in town?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah." She's like, "Well, I just want you to know that I want to be your first member to sign up. And I'm really excited you're coming to town." That individual eventually became the manager of that club, and she ran it for me for the better part of 12 years. So I was completely an absentee owner. I signed the checks. That was about it. Um, so it's interesting to think about that end vision of owning multiple businesses. I think the key critical part of that is having the right team members and knowing how to keep those right team members, and keeping your eyes open to know that some of the best opportunities, the best people you'll meet are going to be ones that just literally show up to you in a coffee shop. So have your eyes wide open.
Mm, interesting. Um, so what else is I'm trying to think through grit, obviously some the title of the book. What is you've read Angela Duckworth's book, I assume?
I love Angela Duckworth. So again, going to the point of entrepreneurial employees and key team members, had a team member that had a terrible day, worst kind of day. They had to balance accounts receivable with field service management late at night, which is really difficult. Sounds easy, very difficult to do. And a technical error was causing all kinds of headaches for her. And I was trying to help her. I was helping her troubleshoot through it. And eventually she solved it at like 9 o'clock at night. And the next morning, by the way, it was gonna be like a really early start. So terrible day, early morning the next morning. I'm like, "Marilyn, you have an uncanny ability just to grit it done," right? And I just like randomly said that term that she inspired me to. Then to the point of peer groups, I was at a forum a couple days later with other business owners, CEOs, and I was telling that story. And my buddy was like, "Wow, you should trademark that. That's kind of a cool term." And that's how the concept was. That's how the title, that's how the term "grit it done" came about, which I use as a tagline for that business. And that's why I obviously, titled the book that as well, because there's a lot there. It shows the power of entrepreneurial team members, and it shows the power of having that right peer group. And I think that when it comes to being a successful entrepreneurial business owner, it's critical to have a grit it done mindset. Because what is grit at its core? If you actually go through and read Angela Duckworth's book, or look at the really cool academic research that underlines it, it's a combination of passion and perseverance. And if I'm going to say define what passion is, what drives passion? Purpose drives passion. So it all goes back to that first step of assessment is a state that's not fun to be in. Locomotion is more fun. But if you do the right assessment and you couple it with your purpose, then you'll be able to get on a road that will lead to high levels of satisfaction and will endow you with the grit, as Angela Duckworth would point out, to go through those challenges, those setbacks, those walls, all those things that differentiate the people that go out and get things done versus those that ultimately don't. So
So this is probably going to be my last question, but something that I think about often is a lot of times in my experience, it seems people, uh, they they like say, I want to start a business, and then they just go, based on their hobbies or interests, they say, this is the business, right? And I'm going to figure out a way to be an influencer or whatever the thing is, right? And that, to me, based on what you're describing, that's not what I did. But I do feel like I love what I do. I'm like obsessive. I'm a nerd that's obsessed with data and tech and all that stuff. But I would say it sounds like you are unemotional when it comes to business investments or purchases. It's very much just like, is it correct that you're like the game for you, or the allure or the excitement is finding the winners? It doesn't matter what it is. You just are looking for the good business that's got no low competition, high success. Is that correct? And because I would say, to me, that seems like a more appropriate way to, if you're treating a business like an asset, like you want to buy an asset that's going to return. um and I guess that maybe this goes back to the assessment of like, do you want a job? Then are you looking for something to fill your time, or are you looking for some money to fund some hobby? And I feel like sometimes people have hobbies that need to be funded by some other business, but they don't realize that they could run a business that funds this thing instead of trying to make the hobby the business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, I live in Utah right now. You're in Idaho currently. A lot of people in my spectrum love the outdoors, right? And I think a lot of them are like, "Oh, I want to get a job in the outdoors so I can live to my passion." That's fine. Other people take the mentality of, "I just want to make a bunch of money so I can go off and go helicopter skiing in India, right? Whenever I want to." So there's no right, there's no wrong answer to it. And I tend to agree that it's good to think about businesses with a keen, unsexy analytical framework 100%. And I outline that in the book. I give the frameworks that I use and I've used successfully. Really, for me though, to answer the question of what actually intrinsically drives me in small business, you might find it surprising, is that just the people, it's the relationships that I get out of it. If I go all into an endeavor, I can do so with a positive, radiating, gonna make this happen, grit it done attitude. And when I have that, I just find that the right kind of people surround me in the process naturally. And those people have enhanced my lives, like I told you about the manager, in ways that I did not even think were possible. So for me, this whole game of small business ownership, this whole game of, not to sound sappy, but life, it is just about the relationships and the people that I meet along the way. So the relationships are the absolute critical part of it. The second part of it is that, running a small business, as you can relate to, and a lot of your audience can, the pile of paperwork is this high. Because of that, I think that small business owners are uniquely positioned to take a nuanced view of government and take an activism in government that is very healthy and good for the country longer term. So to recap, you can have, if you follow the steps in the book, right, and you align it to your assessment, and you go the low risk route, you can get autonomy, you can get freedom, you can control your calendar, you can own your upside. If you go all in, you could probably meet some pretty cool people along the process. There are going to be some life changing relationships, and you'll become a better American citizen in the process. So, to me, it is a no brainer for anyone to consider looking at. It's a lot of work. The failure can be costly, especially if you follow my advice and get an SBA 7A loan that's personally guaranteed to lever up to buy a business. So, the risk can be real. It's a lot of work for sure. With that said, though, it is, I think, a great opportunity to look at, particularly because if you're the average American making $1,118 per week, which is the median US wage, let's gross that up to $70K a year with some value of benefits and everything. You can find a business that's doing $500,000 of, just we'll say, profits or cash flow to the owner. Lever up with 80% SBA financing, bridge the rest of that with your own personal equity. Assume you don't grow the business at all and that you sell it for the same multiple that you bought it for in 10 years and your debt's paid off. You'll make more money during the ownership time, and you'll leave with a 7-figure exit at the end. So to me, it's an absolute no brainer to consider looking at as a career option. And obviously, I wrote the book, Grit It Done, grititdone.com, 99 cents, end of May, 3 hours. That just provides a bird's eye view of the 9 steps of how to do it, complete with all the frameworks, coupled with the actual anecdotal stories of what it's like to be a business owner. Just a no brainer, I think, for a very time efficient and low cost step to take.
Awesome. And what are your 2 other book recommendations?
So the other book recommendation, which is also going to be the movie recommendation, is Shawshank Redemption. The book is by Stephen King. It's a great one. The movie is just, I think, one of the best movies to watch. Life is unfair, think long term, and the right thing will end up happening to you. So a lot of good life lessons out of it. And the other book I'd recommend reading is just one of the best written books that I've ever come across. It's called The Guns of August by Barbara Tushman. It's about the outbreak of World War I, if you'd believe that. But she writes it. She has a way with Pulitzer Prize winning. She has a way with words that is absolutely unrivaled. So from a literary perspective,
What's the book title?
The Guns of August, referring to August 1914 and the outbreak of World War I. Very fascinating topic, but it is written in a way that is, I can't even put words to it.
Awesome. And if people want to get in touch with you, what is your preferred method of contact?
Yeah, so you can go to grititdone.com. In addition to that, I'm active on LinkedIn and getting more active on X as well. So you can certainly follow me there for trends on entrepreneurial business ownership and all that good stuff.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you taking the time to come on today. It's a great conversation. Got my wheels turning, and I'm sure many other listeners as well. And yeah, I'm glad that we were able to connect and maybe see you around.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. My name is Chris Kiefer, and my mission is to champion the relentless pursuit of purpose. And what that means to me is to be an example, a champion, someone that is in the trenches, working and showing and winning and trying and failing in how to pursue a deeper and more meaningful life with the people that I love, with my kids, with my friends, with our family, and also just be a champion and example of entrepreneurship and following my passion and doing what I believe I'm called to on this earth. And so if that inspires you in some way, please share this episode. If you want, like, subscribe, share, whatever, do all the stuff. It means the world to me to get this message and get these guests that I have out there. And if you're interested in any of the book recommendations or looking up other episodes, the movie list, you can visit my website, chriskiefer.com, for all the details on the show, and also check out the Boolean review software, as well as the Boolean automation consulting company that I own for home service businesses. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.